right, girls, thank y'all for joining me today. We are going to be talking about an upcoming unit that you are working on with your students. You're going to be going over argumentative text with them. And it looks like, according to the pacing calendar, you have about a week to cover this. So what is the actual standard that we're going to be working with? What's the TEAC?
So we're working on 4.9E this week, which is recognizing characteristics of an argumentative text, like identifying the claim, explaining the author's purpose with using facts for that argument, and then knowing the intended audience or reader.
All right, and I see that you guys have already gone over persuasive text, so they have an idea of what that is, the text looks like, some of those features. It's got an emotional tone, it's opinion-based, and so they're going to realize through argumentative text that it's got more of a formal tone, it's based on claims and evidence and defending a claim.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about maybe some key carryover standards that they will need as kind of background knowledge to be successful with this standard.
Those will be TEAC's 4.6G, evaluating details to determine key ideas. 4.6F, making inferences and using that evidence to support their understanding. 4.6I, which is monitoring comprehension, rereading, use background knowledge, ask questions, annotate for understanding.
Okay, yes, I love that y'all mentioned 4.6I because I feel like a lot of students, when they're reading informational text, they get confused and they don't reread because it's not as easy to read as fictional text. Okay, so let's set the content for each day. So you've got a week. What content do you want to teach each day?
So we'll focus on this objective every day this week, actually. We probably will spend more time identifying the facts than supporting the claim.
Okay. I do see that you brought this data right here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this. So, okay. What objectives do you think are going to require more time? You were saying the facts. I see that. Okay. So we may need to reduce the time that we're going over identifying the claim and give them more time to focus on finding the facts.
Yeah, based on that pre-assessment data, there were only 2 students that could not identify the claim, so I think we could cover that in pulling them in a small group and work with them. But there are 9 students who weren't able to find the facts the author used to support the claim. So that's why we're looking at spending more time teaching them how to do this. The majority of the class was able to identify the claim versus the facts supporting them.
Okay, that sounds good to me. So what are going to be the key lessons of this week?
The students are going to be reading argumentative text. They're going to recognize the characteristics and structures of an argumentative text. They need to identify the claim, the facts that support that claim, and the intended audience of that passage.
Okay. Let's look closely at identifying the facts that support the claim, which is the most challenging objective of the week, which we've seen here from this data. What are we thinking?
So, according to the pre-assessment again, some students found a few facts, but not all of them. Some wrote those details from the text that weren't actually facts that supported the claim directly, or they didn't make sense with the claim. Some got confused and didn't reread the text to understand it better after they had already identified the claim.
Okay. So again, rereading to understand what we're reading, and then just making sure that what we say is a fact that supports the claim actually makes sense. Okay. I like that. Let's look at the upcoming assessment, which will eventually be the STAR test. And then I know that we'll have an end of unit assessment over argumentative text. And you'll have some exit tickets throughout the week to assess their understanding. What are all the things that you think the students will need to know to be able to master this objective?
So they'll need to know specific content vocabulary, like the claim, like evidence, but also being able to recognize supporting facts or details as well.
Okay.
Yeah, they also need to identify the claim first. That's the most important first step. And then they need to be able to determine if the evidence that they find is logical to that claim.
Okay.
And ask themselves just in general, like, does this make sense?
Yes, that is very important. So I pulled up the Lead Forward website and I just searched for this TEAC and how it was asked on the STAR test, because we want to really make sure that we're asking those questions at the level of rigor that they include in the STAR test.
Yeah.
And they, on question 27 from the 2022 STAR test, they stated, what claim does the author make in the selection? So they would obviously need to know that content vocabulary. And I pulled up the actual passage, which I printed out for you guys, just so we can analyze the data here. It says that 74% chose answer choice B, which was the correct answer. People should listen to music more regularly was the claim. But there were 13% that chose listening to music makes people want to exercise. So why do we think students would choose that answer choice as the claim? What do y'all think?
They may have been looking at the subheadings, because we have subheadings like music in your mood, music moves you, music helps you sleep, music for the brain, and the subheading music moves you may have tripped them up, because when I think of moving, you think of exercise. So had they not, focused on all the others, maybe the moves you kind of.
I think you're right. I think they didn't think about the article as a whole and they just focus on this one subtitled section.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure they're really thinking about the whole thing. Okay, so what do you want students to be able to do by the end of your lesson?
We want them to be able to identify the facts that support an author's claim.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I want to talk about designing the exit ticket first, and how do you want to check to see if they have mastered the objective? Like, how do you want this exit ticket to look? Do you want it to be digital? Do you want them to handwrite this? What are we thinking here?
I mean, I'd really like to do digital, but only because we're looking at that end goal of the STAR and STAR 2.0, and just kind of being able to write, short responses and being able to type and feel confident with that. So if you're good with it, I would rather do digital.
Yes.
I agree. That gives them more practice with that, with the short constructed response. So we just need to figure out which article we can use or articles throughout the week, and then determine the claims and find the supporting facts. So it's very easy to check when they're done. And then just make sure we're wording that question to the level of rigor for their assessments that they're going to be taking. So if they do well on this exit ticket, or their final product, what will they have mastered your original objective is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So based on that digital product and being able to identify the claim and the facts and who's it written for, it matches up with the objective of our lesson.
Yeah, I do think it strongly aligns with that. Okay, so let's look at the activities for the week. Let's see so as you're teaching, what pedagogy will work most effectively for this lesson? Are you thinking guided discourse or modeling? How are you going to do that?
So I think breaking apart the objective is going to work best for us. Starting on Monday, we're just going to focus on identifying the claim.
Okay.
So we'll model finding the claim, then they'll have the students help us do one, and then they'll pair up independently or write on a sticky note and turn it in when they're done. So we're working on that I do, we do, you do model.
Okay, I love that, and I like having a sticky note as just a quick check-in, a quick way to check their if they're learning and successful on that. What do you think?
Yeah, we can also have them work in partners to identify claims of the smaller excerpts of passages. And we'll walk around and monitor how those small groups are going, because we like to do a lot of partner small group work.
Yes, I love that, and I think that's a great way to just solidify that learning and having them work with a partner. You could even think about how you can pair them up, maybe with the low with the high, to support that. Okay, so where and how? Okay, we already talked about so sticky notes. How else will this lesson be laid out, and will you monitor their understanding?
So Tuesday, we'll move on from finding the claim and using facts, still using that I do, we do, you do model, taking more time on this since based on the pre-assessment, they need a lot more support with the facts. So in their independent work, they're gonna write down the facts and then check in with us to see if they're correct. To make it kind of like a game with the independent work and coming to see who's right. Maybe like a relay style or something along those lines. And then they can work again with the partners using those same excerpts from the day before to find the supports that support that argument. Wednesday, then we'll mash it all together and we'll do claim and facts to see if they can identify both of those.
Okay, I love that. I really like how you're breaking it down, just chunking it for them to make it easier. So I have the Lead Forward field guides that I linked up for us that we can look at, just to look at any misunderstandings that students can encounter with this type of text. What are some of the misunderstandings that we're seeing here?
Yeah, some common misunderstandings are thinking that all events, ideas, information is equal of importance.
Okay.
Not everything is always important. There's some fluff in there, but they get confused about that sometimes. They don't always understand the author's intent. So again, the author's purpose for doing what they're doing. They struggle with rereading. They don't like going back and rereading to understand and break it down.
Yes.
And just the difference between key vocabulary like theme, central idea, claim, and topic. Those are some common struggles.
Okay, so that's good that we know that ahead of time. If a student, say for example, finds something from the text, a sentence that they are saying is a fact that supports their claim, and it's incorrect, how will you handle that situation?
I think one of the things we could do is having them verbally restate the claim, like reminding them of what they were trying to connect over, and then saying the fact directly after it to see if those two things make sense together. Making sure that they're staying on topic, because that's another one of the things that I saw in Lead Forward was that they were confusing those kind of vocabularies. So did it match with it?
I like that. I like the rereading to check for their understanding and then just double checking, does this make sense? Because some students don't take the time to do that.
No.
Well, guys, it looks like you have a really good plan in place. So I'm thinking the next time we meet, bring in the student work so we can check for evidence of their learning, and then we will adjust anything if we need to from that point. So I'm very pleased with the lesson. Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you.